Hello and welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Tania and I'm a recent nurse practitioner graduate living in Ontario, Canada. This video has been a long time coming. I haven't filmed a video in so long because I've been busy with school, but I'm glad to say that I finally graduated and I passed the AANP exam, which is the American Nurse Practitioner Primary Healthcare exam. I wanted to do this video because I'm getting a lot of questions from prospective students that are in the process of applying to the NP program here in Ontario. And one of the most frequent questions I'm getting is the essay questions that you have to submit in your application. I have to mention that my answers to the application is directed towards primary healthcare nurse practitioners because that's the program I apply to. I'm going to be reading out my answers, so the video might be a little bit long, but I hope you stick around because I'll be providing some tips along the way to help you in your own application. I actually had to go back into my documents and search for my essay questions that I submitted in my application because it was so long ago and so much paperwork that has been done in the past 2 years that I honestly didn't remember. But I dug up my questions and here they are, so I'm going to share it with you. The first set of questions is part of my letter of intent / narrative statement. And I'm looking down because I have my... The first question is, how will the Masters of Nursing enable you to achieve your career goals? Now, before I start reading my answers, I read it already through all my answers and I cringed because I would change the wording or delete a few sentences. So this is me reflecting back on my answers 2 years later as I've gone through the program and I've learned so much. So there are a couple things that I would change, but I'll read it. So I answered, my overall career objective / passion in nursing is to empower people and communities to take control of their health through education. I seek to achieve this by continually integrating and acquiring knowledge of nursing practice and theory, health promotion, and disease management. I appreciate my role as an advocate and leader in my own community as I recognize the gaps in knowledge and the unique determinants of health that affect it. I have addressed the needs of my community by volunteering as a guest diabetes presenter at my local community center. As an ongoing education program, I provide diabetes education to older Hispanic adults in their language. In order to provide comprehensive and accurate information, I have continued to pursue a diabetes educator certificate with particular emphasis on diabetes in older adults. I believe in partnering with the people in local communities to provide effective learning opportunities. As I continue to take a leadership role, I recognize my own gaps in knowledge and believe that the Masters of Nursing program at the University of, insert the name of your university there, or in this case, University of Ottawa, will help me to develop skills in nursing leadership, research, and education. On a broader spectrum, it will give me the knowledge to discern emerging trends and anticipate future directions in the Canadian healthcare system. A master's in nursing will provide me with the necessary tools to serve my community and other diverse communities more holistically. So that was my answer to my first question. The second question is the length and type of your clinical experience. So this is how I answered. I have been a registered nurse for over 5 years, which is about 3 years ago. I began my nursing career fresh from graduation at blank hospital in Toronto on an acute care for elders medicine floor. That sentence I would delete. I wouldn't say I began my nursing career fresh from graduation. That sounds weird. But anyways, the population was generally 65 years and older. I got to hone many of my clinical skills there, but more importantly, I was exposed to the issues that this specific population faces. After 3 years, I decided I wanted to see more of the world and explore a different healthcare system. I packed up and moved to Abu Dhabi, UAE, or United Arab Emirates, where I spent 2 years working at Cleveland Clinic, Abu Dhabi. This was a hospital which provided private and public healthcare options. I was exposed to people of different social, cultural, and religious backgrounds to my own, and saw how these factors affected healthcare. As a result, I had to adapt my nursing care to the specific population. I interacted with both high-ranking officials and Bedouins from rural areas of the country. I was exposed to a high population of people with diabetes, which led me to many questions that needed answering. I then returned to Toronto as I wanted to channel this new learned information academically in the diabetes educator program. I am currently employed on a general medicine floor at the name of my hospital, where I continue to learn and practice what I have experienced. I hope to become a certified diabetes educator by summer of 2020 and then continue to pursue a Master's of Nursing at the University of Ottawa. And side note, I am a certified diabetes educator. I actually completed that in October as I started my program in September of 2020. And the final question of the letter of intent or narrative statement is, what is your research experience and interests? So this is how I answered. By way of primary health care, my interests are in health promotion and education, specifically with chronic illnesses like diabetes and addictions. More broadly speaking, I wish to look at how the social determinants of health impact these chronic conditions and how can I affect policy change based on these principles. That sentence sounds weird, just grammatically. How can I affect? Anyways, I digress. My overall experience in hospital has led me to ask myself how readmissions can be prevented in the community and how can people be better supported and educated in the community before coming to the hospital. I have seen frequent reoccurring admissions from the same people whose needs are not being met in the community. Unfortunately, this is the reality in a fast-paced environment like a hospital setting, and despite the healthcare team's best efforts, readmissions are a reality. Frequent flyer is an unfortunate term used often in hospitals to misrepresent a patient. It fails to recognize the issues that lead up to the readmission in the first place. It is important to understand the issues people face, what works for them, and how they can be supported. Now that I've read these 3 questions, I can give you my overall opinion and my own critique of myself. I would say for the overall application, you have to be able to sell yourself. You have to be able to put on paper your own unique experiences as a nurse and sell yourself to the panel or to whoever is reading your application. You have to be able to tell a story of how you started nursing, where has your nursing career taken you, what experiences you've experienced during that time, what lessons you've learned. So that's what you have to try to transmit in your application. And as you saw throughout my application, and even in the second set of questions, I constantly brought up the word diabetes because that is one of my passions, and I try to, as much as possible, focus on that because that's what they want to see from you. What are your interests? And as the third question was, what is your research experience and interest? And at the time, I did not have research experience, so I tried to focus more on my interests. You also have to try to emphasize your career goals, where you see your future and how this program will prepare you to achieve those goals. Because that was one of the questions. The first question, how will the Masters of Nursing enable you to achieve your career goals? So you have to do kind of some self-reflection of where you are as a nurse and where you want to take your career as a nurse. Moving on to the second set of questions, these are called the essay questions, so they're 4. And I've seen from university to university, they're pretty much similar across the board with some different questions here and there. So the first question, why do you want to become a primary healthcare nurse practitioner? So this is how I answered. As a nurse for over 5 years, I began my nursing career on a medical unit and have remained there to this day. I chose medicine because I was interested in knowing a little bit of everything. I have been exposed to numerous health conditions ranging from respiratory to cardiac, among others. Even though these conditions could be seen as separate systems requiring different specialists, I have come to figure out a commonality between them. Acute medical escalation could have been preventable in the community. At the beginning of my career, I was focused on treating the illnesses and discharging patients back to the community. I took a micro-level perspective towards illness, focusing mostly on the individual and accompanying pathophysiology. As I navigated through my nursing career, I found myself asking why. Why are there so many repetitive hospital admissions for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, in brackets COPD exacerbation, congestive heart failure, and unmanaged diabetes, to name a few? Here I had a grammatical error, so I would change that, but you can't see that. As I read patient notes and conversed with them, I began to realize that there were many external factors like education, environment, and social supports that combined to affect the health of individuals. I started focusing on the patient's determinants of health that led to the frequent hospital admissions. Hospital-based medicine only solved the acute problem of the illness, prompting me to ask myself another question: how? How are individuals supported in the community in order to prevent a readmission to the hospital? Question mark. How can I and the healthcare team connect them with these supports? How can I advocate for policy change? Question mark. My perspective changed from a more meso to macro level one as I began to unravel these questions. I realized that primary health care was the root of it. Primary health care not only empowers people on a micro level, but also strengthens communities, can help reduce the acute care burden on hospitals, and can have the power to affect policy. The hospital setting can be hectic and task-focused. However, I have witnessed the powerful impact of taking the time to involve and educate people and families to take control of their health before, during, and after an illness. I believe in the continuum of I believe in the continuum of care throughout life in all settings. I recognize the importance of working together with the interdisciplinary team to achieve optimal health for patients and families in the future. Patients and families, period. In the future, I hope to affect policy change based on primary health care principles. For these and many other reasons, I have chosen to focus on primary health care nurse practitioner program, there's a mistake there, at the University of Ottawa. For this question, I remember trying to emphasize the importance of why do I want to become not only a nurse practitioner, but a nurse practitioner in primary health care. And for that question, you have to know what primary health care is, which is totally different from, I would say, what the majority of nurses go into after graduation, which is acute care in a hospital. And I was one of those nurses because, as you saw in my previous questions, most of my experience was on an acute medical floor. What I was trying to get across is that I wanted to catch the patients before they came to the hospital, meaning what could I do in the community to prevent these hospital admissions as a primary health care provider. I also want to pat myself on the back because I realized that I put in a key point that I would certainly emphasize on your applications, and that's working within an interdisciplinary team. As you know, in nursing, you work as a team. It's not only nurses, you work with doctors, physios, RTs, social workers. So that is the same thing in primary health care. So you have to show, almost like an interview, that you are a team player and that you know also the resources available in primary care. Moving on to the second question. So, what professional and personal qualities would you bring to the role of nurse practitioner in primary health care? Again, the key word, primary health care. Professionally, I am currently enrolled in a diabetes educator program because I believe in the importance of education as a way to prevent and manage disease. I have noticed a lack of awareness and education when it comes to diabetes in my own community, the Latin American community. As part of a Spanish-speaking community center, I saw how a diabetes educator came to present to an older adult population who spoke minimal English. She used a translator, but people were still left with questions. I decided to do my own presentation on diabetes to the same group. The reaction was vastly different, as I was able to present the material and answer their questions in Spanish. Living in a multicultural society, I recognize the needs in my own community and the unique needs of a growing diverse Canadian population. As a nurse, I believe that education is a professional responsibility. I believe that my passion for education can help me with my role as a future primary health care nurse practitioner. Second paragraph. Traveling to the Middle East to live and work grew me both professionally and personally. I wanted to expose myself to not only a different healthcare system, but also to a different way of living. Professionally, the experience expanded my nursing knowledge and skills to new and different ways of providing care. I was able to adapt successfully to my role and managed to connect with people from different sociocultural and religious backgrounds. Acknowledging and appreciating these differences helped me develop therapeutic communication skills, both verbally and non-verbally, that translates to my current practice in Canada. Third paragraph. Personally, I became more aware of my values, behaviors, strengths, and weaknesses. Self-awareness became a core personality strength, which allowed me to be better equipped to overcome challenges and solve problems. It permitted me to react and manage different situations rather than avoiding them. I believe that this personal skill will serve me as I navigate the program at the University of Ottawa and eventually into practice as a primary health care nurse practitioner. This question can be broken down in many different ways, but the way I chose to answer it was separating the professional and personal experiences unique to me. If you would have seen me in my Get to Know Me video, you would know that I went to the Middle East for 2 years, and that really grew me, again, not only professionally, but personally. So I tried to transmit that in my essay. And that is my own unique experience. Maybe you have your own unique experience. So I would tie that into the question and possibly separate it personal and professional. Again, it's not, maybe it's not the style that you would do, but this is what I did. And throughout the question, you see that I sprinkled in diabetes because, again, I want them to know that diabetes is my passion, continues to be my passion, and is also part of primary care. So as much as possible, I try to tie that in, and again, emphasizing primary health care. Because if you are applying to the primary health care program, you want to emphasize that you know what it is and that it's different from acute care. Third question. Describe what primary health care is and how you understand the role of the nurse practitioner in primary health care. So this is how I answered. Primary health care is a comprehensive approach that supports an individual and community across a spectrum of settings and throughout life, ranging from early child development to emergency service to end-of-life care, in brackets, among others. Primary health care encompasses primary health, health promotion, secondary health acute and chronic disease management, and tertiary health, rehabilitation and recovery. It looks at external factors such as housing, education, income, and environment that affect health. Primary health care stresses the importance of interdisciplinary care to patient and community, which can result in better healthcare outcomes, more efficient use of resources, and increased satisfaction for both user and provider. As a registered nurse, I realize the limitations within my own scope of practice, and I am not afraid to tap into the resources available to me. I realize that partnering with other healthcare professionals has allowed me to provide comprehensive and holistic care to patients and families. I recognize that primary healthcare nurse practitioners have a further reach into communities, giving them an increased sense of the unique needs of a growing, diverse Canadian population. As a primary healthcare nurse practitioner, I hope to use the knowledge and skills gained at the University of Ottawa to empower individuals and communities and to affect policy change. All right, let's dissect this question. It was a shorter question that I answered compared to the first one, but it's a lot of information I feel that I put into it. Here, they're really asking you if you know what primary health care is. And I remember for this question, I researched the definition of primary health care, and I researched a whole bunch, took a whole bunch of ideas and put it into my own definition or into my own words of what primary health care is. So that's where I got primary health care as health promotion, secondary health, and tertiary health, because I really wanted to drive the fact that I knew what primary health care was. And again, here I also mentioned that not only am I applying to be a nurse practitioner, but along with that is a master's of nursing. So I wanted to emphasize my limited scope of practice as a registered nurse, that it can only take me so far, but I wanted to kind of break that barrier and expand my knowledge. So that's what I basically included in this question. And I also wanted to mention the fact that if you've noticed in the previous answers, I mentioned as much as possible the institution or the university that I'm applying to. And I read in other forums, please read over and make sure that you're changing the name of the university. You don't want to submit an application to one university with a different university's name, because that's an automatic disqualification, I think. So make sure that you are updating the name of the university that you're applying to. And the final question. So, given that each course requires at least 15 hours of prep time per week, in addition to course and clinical placement hours, describe specific strategies you would use to meet the demands of the program. So this is how I answered. Becoming a primary healthcare nurse practitioner has become my professional and personal goal. For me, achieving any life goal isn't just about wanting it badly. Doing the work and setting myself up for success by using the right strategies is necessary. Strategies don't have to be complex, but do require commitment and consistency. Time management strategies that have helped me in the past and continue to help me are spending time to plan and organize. Spending a little time at the beginning of each task to organize my thoughts and write down a plan is time well spent. I also like to set daily and long-term goals as a way to give me direction. I make goals specific, measurable, realistic, and achievable. Since I am a visual person, I find that writing my plan and goals on a big calendar, highlighted with different colors, helps me visualize them more clearly. Using the calendar approach, I prioritize by flagging items with a deadline. I also realize that life happens, so I have to be flexible and allow for interruptions and distractions. I often set out an amount of time to handle interruption. Another important strategy that I practice every day is mind-body balance. I believe in strengthening my mental agility through physical readiness. Exercise has helped me to achieve this balance. Time management is an ongoing process that I continue to develop daily for both academic, professional, and personal achievements. For this question, I believe they're asking you specific time management strategies. It's not, at least in my opinion, it's not sufficient enough to know that you do have them, but you have to go into a little bit of detail saying what are those strategies. So in my case, I like to use a big calendar and I post it on the wall and I highlight it with different colors so I know the deadlines and things that are coming up. So you can mention that if you have an agenda, if you have a to-do list, if you write it on your laptop, if you have reminders, whatever the strategies are, you can mention that as well. Also, I specifically mentioned the SMART goals. That is everywhere. I'm sure you've been exposed to that in nursing school. It doesn't stop in the nurse practitioner program. There are SMART goals, so I would definitely include that in it. You can also mention financial strategies. I didn't really include it in my own essay, but I don't see why not, why you couldn't include that in your own application. A lot of students drop down to part-time or casual work to make school a priority, and that looks good on the application because they want you to put school as number one above everything else. So cutting down on work to part-time or casual position is putting school number one. I know there are some students that I met that were enrolled in the program full-time and had full-time jobs, and I honestly don't know how they did it. That is not me. I cannot do that, so I had to drop down to casual. So you can also put that in your application. My final thoughts on the entire application process. So for both sets of questions, I did not include the question in the actual document. I just included my answer. And my reason for this is because I wanted to use the maximum amount of pages or words allowed, because they are not only reading your experiences and not only are you selling yourself to them, but they're also judging you on how you're able to write, because if you are going into the nurse practitioner program, it is combined with a master's, unless you have your master's previously. But they are judging you on how your writing skills are, and there are a lot of essays to write. So I took the maximum amount of the pages required. You also want to be very specific in the examples that you give, whether that's talking about your research that you've done or your research goals, your interest in going into primary health care, the definition of primary health care. Just remember to be very specific about it. It not only showcases your writing ability, but also allows you to tell your story as a nurse and everything that you've experienced. I also want to mention again that you really have to know the difference between primary care and acute care. If you are applying to the primary health care program, this is a must. It's so different to hospital work, and I didn't really know what was involved in it until I've gone through the program. Even now, there's so much to learn, but you really have to emphasize the fact that you know the difference between both of them, and both of them have their unique set of skills. So again, research the definition of primary care, make it into your own words. Another tip I have is to go out and shadow a nurse practitioner. Ask them if you can shadow them for a day to see what it's like, and you can include that in your application. That looks really good, meaning you've done your homework, you know what you're getting yourself into, and you can even ask the nurse practitioner certain questions. What is primary health care? What's involved? What are the resources? Include that in your application. It looks great. I didn't do that. I would have done that. I'm sure there are other students that have done that. But if I were to give myself a tip, it would be that. And my final overall tip for the application process or the answering the questions, I would treat it as an interview. Treat it as you're selling yourself in terms of your nursing career. Why are you deserving of that spot versus maybe somebody else who isn't? And you can tell in the application who's done their homework and who's just kind of applying on a whim. So I would definitely treat it as a blank slate. Tell your story through the application, through the questions, because it kind of guides you. Like, what is your clinical experience? They're asking, they want to know what your unique experiences are. So show off what your experiences are. What have you learned throughout your nursing career? What makes you want to continue expanding your scope of practice? If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for sticking around. I hope you learned something today. I hope I was able to give you some tips for your own application. If you have any questions or comments, leave it down in the comment section. You can also reach me by email or on my Instagram. So that's it, and I will see you in the next video.